Okay, let's go ahead and get rolling. I'm going to share my screen and we will rock and roll here. Okay, so this is Oh My Adrenals, or the Adrenal Repair webinar. When I talk to people about adrenals, most people think of stress and sleep, and we will definitely cover stress and sleep tonight for sure. But there's also more to it than that. I don't ever want to just talk about treating symptoms, because when we just treat symptoms, we're really just practicing medicine, and practicing medicine doesn't work out so well, and especially in our country where, as you guys know, we have more heart disease, cancer, diabetes than any other country in the world, because all we do is treat symptoms. And I don't want to treat symptoms tonight. We want to get to a bigger invitation and always put this in perspective so you can really have the freedom that you want with your health. One of my favorite chiropractic textbooks is called Life Without Fear. And I would tell you that's what I want for you more than anything else, is a life without fear. And especially in this time, there's so much more fear than there's ever been. So I want to, give you some reminders on how you were made, how you were designed to function, and what you can do to live your best life. So I want to start with this word. It's called ZAO. When I was part of an organization called Maximize Living, that's where this word came from. And ZAO means powerful life. It's a Greek word. It's in the Bible. It means powerful life. It means life to the max. And it also means a power to affect a result. And another word for it is efficacious. And efficacious means you have the power to affect a result in your life, that you are powerful, that you're not a victim of your genes. You're not a victim of, bad luck. Like, if you want to change your life, you can do it right now. And I've seen people, over 20 years of practice, thank God, I've seen people reverse their type 2 diabetes in a matter of 11 days. I've seen people with stage 4 cancer completely turn that around. I just had a patient recently got diagnosed with early Alzheimer's disease. She's doing amazing about 2 years later. So she's stepped in and reversed that and is doing absolutely fantastic. So I just want to remind you that you have a life you were meant to live. And that life does not include stress and sleep problems and worry and fear. So we want to tap back into that powerful life you were designed to live. The second thing I did want to show you is this quote by Albert Schweitzer here, okay? And Albert Schweitzer is one of my favorite medical doctors ever. And his quote here says, "It's supposed to be a secret, but I'll tell you anyway. We doctors do nothing. We only help and encourage the doctor within." That's Albert Schweitzer. And the important part there is the doctor within. And what I would like to remind you of, especially during this pandemic, is you have an amazing ability to heal and be well. That's why we call you doctor. We call you Dr. Bonnie, Dr. Priscilla, Dr. George, because you are the doctor. You could just call me Eric. All I'm doing is assisting your own doctor to heal you from within. And that's what your body was designed to do. And it's very important, especially right now during this COVID pandemic. Everyone is talking about social distancing and talking about masks and talking about everything else, but nobody's talking about your immune system that God gave you. You have an amazing immune system, okay? And we're not hearing about that right now, that, by getting your vitamin D levels optimized, by reducing inflammation levels, by eating well, by exercising, you can reduce your risk of ever getting COVID. And if you do get COVID, doing really well with it. I also want to remind you that the vast majority of people that aren't doing well with COVID are people with comorbidities. We're talking 90+% of people that are dying from COVID have a comorbidity. Either obesity is the main one. Second one is high blood pressure. Third one is diabetes, but usually diabetes is associated with obesity. So, if this is a wake-up call for anybody, it can be a wake-up call for, hey, let's start taking care of our bodies and our immune system so that we can be strong, not just for COVID, but for everything else, right? I don't want anybody here dying of heart disease, cancer, diabetes. And that has to do with taking responsibility now and putting into effect some of the things that I'm going to go through. And when I get through the symptoms of adrenal fatigue, which you'll see in a couple of minutes, which are weight gain around the midsection, poor sleep, depression, anxieties, really tired in the middle of the day, really tired when you get up. I'll walk you through all of these things. Instead of just thinking of those as symptoms that we want to go away, what I want you to think of them as an invitation. I did a podcast recently. This is my podcast. It's called Burnout to Breakthrough. And I did this podcast when I went through adrenal fatigue, adrenal burnout. And I went from burnout, but I had a breakthrough. And the breakthrough was the way I was living my life wasn't working for me anymore. I was 41 years old. I had lived the first half of my life one way. And that wasn't working for me. That had created phase 3 adrenal fatigue, almost like nervous breakdown level. And I saw that as my body inviting me to look at life a different way. And I have lived the last 5 years of my life much different than I lived the first 41 years of my life, because this was an invitation. Okay. And so if you wanted to hear more about the things I'm talking about today, you can go and check out burnout2breakthrough.net. That's the website, burnout2breakthrough.net. And you can look at all the old podcasts. It's free. You can also download on iTunes or anywhere else. It's called Burnout to Breakthrough. But that's the idea, is that there can be a breakthrough on the other side of this thing. Not just that your symptoms go away, but there can be a true breakthrough on the other side of it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How can we use this to not only have you get back to Zao, but also have it be a breakthrough so that you're able to live a better, longer, more fulfilling life. So let's start with the what I believe to be the real pandemic that's going to be carrying forward. I know that COVID has absolutely been a pandemic, and as you may have saw in the last webinar, like, anyone dying is not a good thing. I mourn the loss of those people who passed away from this, and that's a real thing. If you ask me what we're doing right now, I will tell you that we're going to have to learn to live with this virus. I told a lot of you guys that earlier. It's not going away anywhere. So I think just hiding in our homes and staying away from people is not a good long-term choice, especially because when we do that, we don't get the normal germs and bacteria that we need for our immune systems to be well. So I think we need to handle it better moving forward now that curve has been flattened. But it's a real thing. But I think on top of that, there's going to be an even bigger pandemic, which is the parabolic rise in stress that's going on right now. So half of all Americans report the coronavirus is harming their mental health. That's according to the Kaiser Family Foundation poll. This one is startling. The Federal Emergency Hotline for people in emotional distress, so people that are just not doing well emotionally, registered more than 1,000% increase in April, right when this whole thing started. And then this one is the most interesting to me. This was a study of the Great Recession that started in 2007. So if you think mortgage crisis, banking crisis, failure of the banks, that was 2008. We went through 5 or 6 years after that called the Great Recession. And for every percentage point increase in the unemployment rate, there was a 1.6% increase in the suicide rate. This affects people on a major level. So just so you know, we had more unemployment in 3 months with this COVID crisis than we did in 2 years of the Great Recession. So this, in terms of unemployment in February, it was 3.8% in the United States, and it got up to 14.4% in April. The highest it ever got during the Great Recession or that bank crisis was 10%. And the reason I say that's a big deal is because when we have all this unemployment and all this stress, everyone says like, oh, it's not really doing much to me, and it's not really affecting me that much. I'm here to tell you, yes, it is. And if it's not, then you should be teaching this this webinar. And the reason I say it's affecting you is because you can't, the fact that you have to wear a mask and talk to another human being wearing a mask, and you can't see their facial expressions, you can't see what's going on, you go out to dinner and you can't see your server's face, that's not normal. Now, whether you think it's, we need to do it, whether you don't, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that's not normal interaction. Same thing, like you can't, okay, when can I go to church again? Are my kids going to be able to play soccer? Are my kids even going back to school again? I had two husband and wife that came in and they said, listen, we're a 2-income family. If our kids don't go back to school, it's not an inconvenience. That's a disaster, So this is affecting us in a major way. And then God forbid you pay attention to the news, and Lord have mercy. It's everything under the sun. It's just so much more negative than it's ever been before. So there's so much more stress than there's ever been. And that is absolutely affecting your adrenals. Okay. And because your adrenals are what helps you deal with stress. So as I get into this, I want you to put yourself in one of these phases maybe, or have an understanding of what this looks like. This is Hans Selye. It's called the General Adaptation Syndrome. I used to do a workshop called Stress Can Give You Gas, General Adaptation Syndrome. Stage 1 it's called arousal. And what this General Adaptation Syndrome means is, like, when you come in contact with a bear in the woods, is the analogy I always use. The first thing that happens is arousal, which means your adrenal glands kick in. Now, the adrenal glands sit right on top of the kidneys, and those adrenal glands are designed to kick out adrenaline and then eventually cortisol to fight off any type of intruder. So you got fight or flight response. So you can either fight that bear or you can run from that bear. Those are the two options that you have. So when you do that, this stage 1, your cortisol levels go up, your DHEA levels go up, which I'm going to explain to you in a few minutes. But then they go back down to normal when that stressor is gone. Unfortunately, in our highly scheduled society with all these deadlines and all the extra stress that we're under now, now you're tied to your phone all the time. There's more access to information, a lot of it bad information than ever before. We move into stage number 2, which is adaptation. So you have chronically elevated cortisol because cortisol helps you manage stress. So your cortisol levels are chronically elevated. Your DHEA levels decline. And I'll talk about both those in a couple of minutes. And that's what we want to make sure doesn't happen. Let me go back for a second, sorry. We want to make sure that those things don't stay elevated. What you're going to feel there is stressed, anxiety or anxiety attacks, mood swings, depression, poor sleep. And then you get into stage 3, stage 3, which is exhaustion, adrenal insufficiency, which means low cortisol, low DHEA, depression, fatigue, poor immunity, brain fog. Okay. So I'm going to show you what this looks like on an actual graph in a second. Now, what does it feel like? What adrenal burnout feels like is the opposite of ZAO, which I showed you a little while ago, which was the power to effective result, powerful life to the full. Adrenal burnout doesn't feel like that. It feels like the opposite of that. So symptoms of your adrenal glands not working. Okay, so again, what happens is you're stressed, your cortisol levels go up over time because these adrenal glands kick out cortisol. It remains elevated over time, but then after a while, it's like whipping a racehorse. You don't use the whip until the end of the race. Have you ever watched the Kentucky Derby? Because if you whip the horse the entire time, they're not going to respond to the whip anymore. Well, the same thing happens with the adrenal glands. If you're always whipping the adrenal glands, eventually they burn out and stop producing cortisol. That's called adrenal burnout. So there's phases of that. There's phase 1. There's phase 2, which is where what happens there is your cortisol is always high. And we'll show you what that looks like in a few minutes. And then when you get towards phase 3, the adrenal glands just give up, cortisol levels go down, DHEA levels go down, and affects a lot of other chemistry. So what does it feel like along that spectrum? If your adrenal glands were overstressed, here's what it feels like. Number 1 is feeling tired and struggling to wake up. Cortisol helps you wake up in the morning. If your levels of cortisol are too low, you cannot wake up normally. Like cortisol are it's like packets of energy. You should wake up with a lot of cortisol, and you should go to sleep with a very little bit of cortisol. Okay, so you want a lot in the morning and a little bit at night. Now, if that gets flipped and you wake up with a little bit of cortisol and you have a lot at night, what do you think you're going to have? Insomnia. You're not going to be able to sleep because you have a lot of cortisol, which is packets of energy. And some of you know what I'm talking about. They call that wired and tired, which means you're wired at night and you're tired in the morning. Trouble falling asleep, what we just said. A mid-afternoon slump is a big one. And again, I'll show you test results with this in a minute. When your cortisol levels are too low around 1 or 2 o'clock, then you crash. You feel like you need a nap. You're tired. You can't concentrate. That was a big one for me. Anxiety or feeling on edge. The reason is because as your adrenal glands get affected, so do what's called your neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, GABA, all those get affected. And the way those get affected is you have a gas pedal and a brake pedal for your neurotransmitters. And like dopamine is a gas pedal, GABA is a brake pedal. Well, if you're driving the car with the gas pedal always on, bad things are going to happen. But that's what can happen with adrenal fatigue is the brake pedal, like GABA, those things get decreased and you have all gas pedal, which causes anxiety, in the brain. Mood swings, like we just talked about, it can be depressed at one time, anxious at another. Depression, weight gain around the midsection. When your cortisol levels go up, cortisol, it makes you gain weight around the midsection especially, so you can't have a hard time getting rid of the spare tire or the weight around your rear end. Immunity issues, that's one of the first things I noticed. My immune system wasn't working. You need cortisol for your immune system to function. Brain fog is a big one. And then body aches. Cortisol is like, if you ever heard of cortisone is it's an anti-inflammatory. Well, cortisol is your body's natural anti-inflammatory. And when you don't have enough of that, you're going to be inflamed and in pain all the time. So if any of that is you, we're going to talk about what to do about it and how you can start changing that in just a minute. So I'm going to give you my story. So I went through this, as I told you, this is about 5 years ago now. And my entire life, as some of you guys that know me, I'm definitely a type A personality. And my schedule looked like this. If your schedule looks like this, watch out for adrenal fatigue. It was packed all the time. I just had so many things going on at the same time. And I also, if I do something, I do it to the nth degree. So if I race my bike, I want to, I know I'm not going to be a pro because I haven't done it long enough. But I want to do it at that level. I want to hire a pro coach to help me. If I do something in practice, I want to do it at 100%. And, whatever it is, I want to do to the hilt. And that had really stressed me out over time because I'm a perfectionist and, all of those things. So by doing that, I was stressing my adrenal glands out like crazy. Okay. So what happened after this typically happens with a lot of people with an adrenal crash, is they're running on fumes for a long time. Like they've depleted the bank account. They're in that stage 3 of the general adaptation syndrome. Cortisol levels are low, DHEA levels are low, neurotransmitters are off, and then they do something and something happens where it just sends them over the edge. And what happened for me, some of you going to know this story, was I broke my arm mountain biking. So this is me waiting in the hospital to get my arm reset. This is like COVID, like literally hitting me in the face, like this COVID crisis that's going on. This, instead of being a COVID pandemic and lockdown, this was a rock that I landed on with my face. And so my arm in this picture is actually turned inside, but the other part of my arm is going outside. So I won't go into a lot of details there, but this required surgery. I couldn't work in the office. I was told I would never be able to adjust people again, wouldn't be able to be a chiropractor anymore because the doctor said, this is the worst injury that you could have to your elbow, and this is the worst one I've ever seen. It's called a terrible triad. So that was my stressor, right? And then what happened to me is I started getting sick all the time. So I'd get a lot of symptoms. I was getting respiratory stuff, which I never got before. I remember 3 or 4 times just really, really bad stuff that would not go away. You would call it bronchitis or whatever. I don't love that diagnosis, but just, chest infection. And just these things wouldn't go away. I started getting anxious all the time for no reason. I would wake up with a lot of anxiety and I couldn't figure it out. I would wake up at 2:00 in the morning and not be able to go back to sleep. I went from sleeping really well for 40 years of my life to not being able to sleep. I would wake up tired, and I would be even more tired in the middle of the day where I couldn't even make it through a full day. I was a mess, and I couldn't figure it out for a long time. I'd done a lot of different, looked at a lot of different things, gone to different doctors. And one of my colleagues said, "Hey, have you had your adrenals tested?" And I said, "No, I haven't. As a matter of fact, I haven't done that. I haven't even thought about that." So I had my adrenals tested, and then this is what they came back like. So the cortisol I was telling you about before, you should wake up with about 30 units of cortisol up here. That's what this green line is. So you should wake up with it here, and then around noon, it goes down quite a bit because you're up and at them. And then it goes down slowly during the evening, and then goes down even more at night. Okay. So when you go to bed at night, you want this cortisol level to be low over here. So you want to wake up high, and it goes down, 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 and you're able to go to sleep. So mine was actually worse than this. I couldn't find mine to put up here. Mine was a flat line across the bottom, which means I had when I was waking up with a cortisol of like 1. Normal range of cortisol in the morning should be anywhere from 15 to 35. I was waking up with cortisol of 1. And then over the rest of the day, I just got more and more and more and more tired. So, one sec here. Okay. So as I looked at this, I said, okay, that's my problem. My DHEA level is really low, which I'll show you in a minute. So what this shows you is this is adrenal phase 3. All right. I was in adrenal phase 3 over here, which is total adrenal exhaustion, which explained why I couldn't sleep, which is why I had brain fog, which is why I had all this anxiety. I mean, I was miserable. One of the things I saw that over a long period of time, this affects your neurotransmitters, one of them being epinephrine and norepinephrine. And when you have those things that are affected and the ratios are flipped, which one of mine is really high, the other really low, that's been absolute one of the main indicators of people that commit suicide. And I'm looking at this going, okay, I wasn't there yet, but I could see it from there. I could see if you live that way long enough, that's where you might be. So I literally say this test saved my life. I remember being in tears on the phone with the doctor, the functional medicine doctor I was talking to, and she was explaining to me what was going on. And I remember being in tears. And the 2 things I said is, 1, I would have paid $10,000 for this test, not $400. I would have paid $10,000 for the test because somebody finally told me what was wrong with me and told me what I needed to do to get better. And I finally figured out what was going on. And that's what I want to take you through a bit tonight, because I was able to get out of this. When I retested, I was up in this kind of lower green level, and then I retested again almost a year later. I was up in this higher green level, and I'm back to my old self, which is great. Actually back to better because I haven't put myself back in that hole. Okay, so let's talk about the players here. We talked about cortisol. Cortisol is, again, packets of energy. You should wake up with a lot of cortisol, go to bed with a little bit of cortisol. The other one is DHEA. Um, DHEA is the fountain of youth hormone. Okay, it's the basis or the building block for just about all of the other hormones in your body. Okay, and so when you have high levels of DHEA, you feel young and you age more slowly. Okay, so DHEA, here's what it affects: your immune response. So you're able to fight off colds and flus. What else do you think you'd be able to fight off right now? COVID or any other thing, or cold and flu season when it comes up. But what else are you able to fight off with a strong immune system? Cancer. If you have a weak immune system, my main concern is cancer. It's not COVID. Because the same immune system that fights viruses and bacteria recognizes cancer cells that are made every day and kills them. So higher DHEA, better immune response. Prevention of atherosclerosis, which is specifically having to do with heart disease. Higher DHEA means more mitochondrial function. If you ever heard me talk about mitochondria and cancer, so there's a whole there's a genetic theory of cancer, and then there's a metabolic theory of cancer, and the metabolic theory is winning out. When you have mitochondrial damage is when you actually start to the cancer cells or normal cells can turn cancerous because of damage to the mitochondria. But also this has to do with Alzheimer's disease. If you develop Alzheimer's disease because the mitochondria in the brain are not functioning normally, producing energy for your brain, right? Endothelial function, which has to do with the heart again. Bone metabolism, which is healthy bones as you get older. The number one cause of death in people over the age of 80 years old is falls, okay? Complications from falls. Body composition, which means more fat around the midsection, which leads to all kinds of other problems. Sexual function, because this makes estrogen, testosterone, progesterone as well. And then central nervous system function. So you want high levels of DHEA. When you have adrenal fatigue and adrenal stress, your DHEA levels go down, okay? Now, the reason that the one thing I do want to remind everybody of, when I talked to that doctor I was telling you about on the phone, she was like, I don't know how you're even walking around right now with these levels. She's like, you should be in bed. And she's like, oh, I see you're a chiropractor. I said, yeah. She's like, do you get adjusted? I'm like, duh, of course I get adjusted. And she's like, okay, that makes sense. That's why you're still somewhat functional, because you've been getting adjusted. And the reason I say that is because the whole thing that controls the adrenal glands is called this is hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. They're actually all linked together, okay? So if the adrenal glands don't work on their own, they work with pituitary gland and the hypothalamus here. So when you get adjusted, and when I was getting adjusted, I was getting normal input into my hypothalamus. I was getting normal input into my pituitary, which was then regulating my adrenal cortex to where I probably would have crashed a whole lot earlier had I not been getting adjusted. You know, we talk about when you get adjusted, you're more alive when you get adjusted, not just that your back pain or your neck pain or your headaches go away. Yeah, that's great. We talk about, bone out of place pressing on a nerve. We take the pressure off the nerve, that gets better. But that's half the story. The other half of the story is, what about all the nerves feeding into the brain? So literally when you get adjusted, especially at the upper cervical spine, you're getting input into the brain. Like you're jump starting a car, or a car battery that's been dead is coming back to life. So when you get adjusted, that's happening every single time you get adjusted, which is why I will get adjusted the rest of my life. Which is always why I say chiropractic is not a treatment, it's a lifestyle, because the most important thing you take care of is your brain and your spinal cord, because that doctor within can undo a lot of damage if it's working the way it's supposed to. And it actually undid a lot of damage for me until it got overwhelmed. But that's the credit that I give to chiropractic. So if you're not getting adjusted now, you need to be. And if you are, keep that up. That's the most important thing that you can do. So what do you do lifestyle wise now? So you're getting your adjustments, you're taking care of the nervous system. What do we need to do lifestyle wise when it comes to this? So let's get into that. First thing, let's talk about the 4 S's. Okay. Those 4 S's are stimulants, stress, sleep, and supplements. Stimulants. I'm going to talk about coffee. This is where everybody gets off or mutes the line now. So the reason I want to talk about stimulants first is because stress is a stimulant. It causes the adrenal glands to activate, but so does coffee, and so does sugar. So does any stimulant. So does a Red Bull. So does Coca-Cola. So does caffeine. So does any of that. So if you're already dealing with this low-level fight or flight, which most of us are throughout life, just normal stress, You add stimulants on top of that, and you're robbing the bank account even more, right? So when your adrenal glands are always activated, your bank account of cortisol and DHEA goes down. Well, when you're drinking coffee, and Monster energy drinks and Rockstar energy drinks and all of this other stuff, it's going down even more, right? So you're getting down into the red here. So stimulants, the one I do want to talk about, and just so you know, when I talk to anybody about, counsel anybody on what to do to overcome this, they always say, I can't give up coffee. There's no way I can give up coffee. And you're not shocking me by telling me that. I know you think that because that's what you're doing to try to like bridge the gap. I understand that, but it is what it takes. Now I'm going to show you some alternatives so you don't have to just say, okay, never doing another stimulant. I'm going to show you what you can do that's much more effective for your body. So let's talk about stimulants here for a minute. Coffee, you could do decaf. Organic decaf is better for a variety of reasons. So it's not the coffee itself, it's the caffeine. But if you want to do other coffee alternatives, if you don't like doing decaf coffee, there's other coffee alternatives. And this is just from a website, Silver Jasmine, it looks like. If you just Google coffee alternatives, there's so many coffee alternatives that can help with energy without it being a stimulant, okay? A patient just sent this to me today, and she's like, my friend has been trying to get off of coffee, and she said she doesn't really like green tea or any of that, so she's been doing this coffee that's from mushrooms, so it's made from mushrooms. So it says, indeed, intense, deep coffee notes from roasted Ramon seeds. So there's seeds, mushrooms, and it's a coffee alternative. Laird Superfoods does one of these as well. If you just Google mushroom coffee alternative, you can find them. You get a lot of the same taste without the stimulants. One of my other go-tos is just if you want something warm in the morning or you want a little bit of caffeine in the morning, like green tea is much more effective. Green tea doesn't have that same spike of caffeine. When you drink coffee, you're getting a very intense caffeine reaction. When you drink green tea, because it's got L-theanine and it's got other alkaloids in it, it lowers the effect of the caffeine on your adrenal glands. So you can still do that and get a little bit of a pick-me-up, but you're not getting that, sledgehammer that you're getting with coffee. So green tea is great. You would sweeten that with monk fruit or stevia. Start with that in the morning. I did a podcast about this, ginger shots. This was a couple years ago on my podcast. I did a video on Facebook on this too, on the Axiom Health Solutions page. But these ginger shots are amazing. Now you can buy them on Amazon. It's just ginger juice. You're juicing ginger root, and you put stevia in there as well, a little bit of squeeze of lemon, and you're good to go. You can juice a whole big, kind of head of ginger and get a week's worth of shots out of this if you want, and it wakes you up immediately. Like you get a little bit flushed, your brain starts going, and it absolutely wakes you up. You can also, like I said, buy them on Amazon. They're a little bit more expensive, but you can do that as well. They come in little bottles. It's like a 5-hour energy, but without all the nasty stimulant junk in there. So there's so many alternatives there. You can do green tea, you can do ginger shots, you can do these coffee alternatives. But that's the first thing you need to do for like this 90 days is you got to get rid of the stimulants. Some people can start adding back coffee later on once they've repaired the imbalance, but you got to get rid of the stimulants there. Now, where do you think the other stimulant is going to come from? Yes, you guessed it, sugar. I have people tell me all the time, I don't eat sugar. And then I'll show them this picture and they're like, holy cow, I get a lot of sugar. So if you look at water over here, this is the amount of sugar that's in water, 0 grams. I just drink coconut water. Well, that's 15 grams of sugar. Like I always say, you should try to, if you're going to drink something, it should be single-digit grams of sugar per serving size, right? So preferably 0 or as close to 0 as possible. Even pure coconut water, this has sugar added. We're 15 grams of sugar. I just do green tea. That's honest tea. That's 19 grams of sugar per serving size in an honest tea. You keep going up. Horizon, again, organic chocolate milk, 22 grams. Organic apple juice, 26 grams of sugar. That's more than half of what you should have in a day. Coca-Cola, small Coca-Cola, 28 grams, much less you get one of these big Cokes or Big Gulp. Simply Lemonade, 37 grams. Red Bull, 39 grams. And what do you think has the most? The Green Machine Naked Smoothie. So it's absolutely full of sugar and added sugar, 53 grams of sugar. And what all of this sugar does is spikes the adrenal glands to where they're working now overtime. And you don't want that happening. We need to get rid of all the stimulants in our lives. So getting rid of added sugar is a big one. Reading food labels, really simple. If you just read food labels and put it back. Look at the serving size and look at the sugar grams and put it back when you see 19 grams of sugar or 15 grams of sugar, or God forbid, 39 grams of sugar. What can you drink? You can drink water. You can drink LaCroix, like sparkling water with a few drops of stevia in it. You can make your own lemonade, right? I just made this on 4th of July. We squeezed a bunch of lemons, water, stevia, ice, and you're good to go. You can drink Zevia Cola. You can make your own smoothies that don't have added sugar. There's a lot that you can do there. But what I recommend for people is starting to get into an eating plan that's going to eliminate or minimize sweets. Okay. So this is the Axiom eating plan. I'm not going to teach it in detail tonight. I'm going to give you a resource in just a minute where I did a whole webinar on this, a whole 35-minute webinar that you can check out. But the basis of the Axiom eating plan here, I've been working on this for several months because I've had people ask, hey, what do I do? What do you do when you eat, right? You know, like they ask me, do you do paleo? Do you do keto? Do you do Whole30? What do you do? And I don't do any of those. I do this, which kind of looks like a Mediterranean diet, but with some modifications. So there's 6 principles plus 1 that I have on that webinar. But the basics of it is the base of it down here is fruits and vegetables, a lot of fruits and vegetables. When I say whole grains, if you're not trying to lose weight, especially, even if you are trying to lose weight, people lose weight on this diet. Again, looks like a modified Mediterranean diet. People lose weight, inflammation levels go down, heart disease risk goes down. The whole grains I'm talking about there is not white bread. It's going to be like brown rice, steel cut oats, quinoa. Those are the 3 grains that I'll usually eat. Brown rice, steel cut oats, or quinoa. And what do these things all have in common? They're not processed. It's not organic, or it's not quick oats where they're done in 1 minute. It's not white rice. It's not any of those things. It's brown rice, quinoa, or steel cut oats that take longer. And what those things do is they turn to sugar more slowly in your body. That's why they're better for you. And if I do eat bread, which I do sometimes, especially if I'm being active, I'll eat like Ezekiel bread or sprouted grain bread or a sprouted grain tortilla if I make like a hummus wrap for lunch. So sprouted grain, again, much lower glycemic, much lower inflammatory, doesn't have the same stimulant effect. So that's what I do down here. You're also going to add good oils like olive oil. You can do nuts. You can do coconut oil. You could do avocado oil, legumes or beans. Those are fine. And then, you know, fish and seafood, I've started to eat more of that. So I'd say 3-4 times a week for me, I'll eat fish, sometimes shrimp, poultry, dairy, and eggs. That goes more towards the top. I'm not eating a lot of dairy, really at all. Eggs, I'll eat 3 or 4 times a week usually. Poultry I eat on a regular basis, like chicken and turkey. That can be done, again, daily to weekly at moderate portions. But what you want to limit for most people is the sweets, right? The sugar. And then red meat for most people is anti-inflammatory. It doesn't mean I don't do red meat. It just means I don't do it all the time. So I do that more on like a vacation meal than I do eating it all the time. And if I do eat it, it's grass-fed red meat. For most people, if you're not eating grass-fed meat, it's really high in omega-6 fats, which are bad for you. So if you're just eating a hamburger from a restaurant, or you're getting regular hamburger from the grocery store, it's really inflammatory. So that's why I would limit that. If you are going to eat it, I would eat the organic or the grass-fed. Okay. So wine in moderation is okay. Wine in moderation usually means a glass or so per night for women, maybe 2 for men, and not more than that. And then lots of water. So that's the Axiom eating plan. And so I'm going to show you how to get that in a couple of minutes here. But this just reminds me, as we get into the new office and the new grand reopening, we're doing the grand reopening party on July 18th, Saturday, July 18th from 10 to 1. So 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We'll be up there. And so we'll be able to use the hallway, so we'll be able to spread out a little bit and have the social distancing and all that. But what we're going to be doing is 2 different assessments. So Maggie is actually going to do a smoothie class to kick things off. I think I think we can have first 15 signing up for that. We're going to be doing a metabolic true age assessment. And who's going to be doing that is Reggie from, some of you guys know Reggie from Orange Theory. Reggie also has a company where he works with people with and helps lay out exercise plans. And a lot of them are online, very easy. You can do it from anywhere, because a lot of people are asking, like, what type of exercise do I need to do? And this is the expert on this. This guy knows more about fitness, has forgotten more about fitness than I've ever learned. And his company is called Body Lab. And he's going to be taking people through a metabolic true age assessment. So using the scale, Tanita scale, it will look at your body composition. So it will look at your body fat, your body water, but also what's called your metabolic age. And it tells you how old your body really is. Your metabolic age, like you might be 53, but it'll tell you what your metabolic age might be 73. We don't want that. If you're 53, you want your metabolic age to be 33, which means you have the metabolism of a 33-year-old. And he can help you with what to do about that. I'm also going to be going through the top 3 killers assessments. So it's called a lifestyle assessment, or an ERE, environmental risk evaluation. I call it the top 3 killers assessment because heart disease, cancer, and now Alzheimer's disease is even, I'm putting that in with diabetes. Heart disease, cancer, and diabetes are the top 3 killers. Well, Alzheimer's is called type 3 diabetes. So there's type 1 and type 2. They're calling it type 3 diabetes is Alzheimer's. And so there's an assessment that we do where you take it online. We look at your nutrition. We look at your sleep habits. We look at your digestion habits. We look at your hormones. We look at your energy. And it's a questionnaire. We'll actually rank you in terms of what kind of crisis you might be in for those top 3 killers. And then we can design what you need to do about that. So if you've been dealing with something nagging, or if you just want to find out where you're at and what you need to do to be healthy, I'm going to be doing that. These are free, by the way. You just need to schedule those with Maggie. We're also going to be doing raffles, prizes, and all supplements are going to be 15% off. The only bigger supplement deal we ever do is Red Friday, where we have hundreds of people there doing that. But this is going to be the second biggest supplement sale of the year at 15% off. So this is Reggie. I was trying to find one with my shirt off. I couldn't. I'm going to be doing the top 3 assessments. Trust me, I look just like that with my shirt off. You guys just have to trust me on that. But you do need to sign up for these because they take a little bit of time. So I think they're every 20 minutes. So if you want to do that, some of you registered in the office today. Otherwise, you can email Maggie at maggie.axiom@gmail.com. That's maggie.axiom@gmail.com. And tell her that you want to do either the True Age Metabolic Assessment, the top 3 killer assessment with me, or both. And when you do that, she will send you a link to the questionnaire that I use. You don't need to do that for the True Age assessment. Some people are doing both of them. So just let Maggie know which one you want to do. Do you want to do the metabolic assessment or the assessment with me? You're looking at the risk factors. Just let her know. Again, that's maggie.axiom@gmail.com. Okay. So we talked about the stimulants. Now the second S is stress. Okay. The problem with stress right now is we just have too many things to do. We have so much going on in our lives where it's gotten to the point where we cram so many things in that we don't get a break and we don't have a whole lot of downtime. So the to-do list is just so many things. So I'm just going to give you a couple of things that have worked really well for me, especially if you're dealing with this adrenal fatigue or you feel like you're starting to deal with this. First one is permission to sleep in. I just did a consultation with somebody earlier. We did testing and we tested her adrenals. We tested 4 cortisol levels. We tested her melatonin levels. We tested her DHEA levels. And she's like, yeah, that's me. And I showed her on the test. I said, yeah, you're waking up with a very low amount of cortisol. And then at lunch, it's even worse. And she's like, yeah, I wake up tired. I'm really tired after lunch. And I say, and then over here shows that you don't want to fall asleep at night. She's like, yeah, that's me. So she sleeps, 8 hours a night or so, but I was telling her, you might need 8 to 10 hours when you're dealing with this, when you're trying to let your body heal from this. You might need more sleep than you think. So for me, it was just permission to sleep in or say no. I didn't have to get up and do that early bike ride. I started canceling some of my early appointments. And I didn't have to get up and do that phone call at 6:30 a.m. with somebody on the East Coast. I started sleeping in a bit more and taking care of my body. So when I was on the phone with the doc I was telling you about, the functional medicine doctor, she's like, treat your body like a puppy. Like if the puppy wants to sleep, the puppy can sleep. Like you need to be able to sleep. Second thing for me was what I call midday reset. I really recommend this for a lot of you guys. Some of you have heard me talk about this before. Your brain's a bit like a computer. And for me, I can get up and go pretty hard to about midday. But then after midday, productivity goes down. But by the way, after age 40, that happens pretty rapidly. I've seen in a lot of studies. So you're pretty effective in the first part of the day. Second half of the day, not so much. So if you want to get creative, high leverage work done, you want to do that in the morning, not the afternoon. But I got to do that in the afternoon as well. And you do too. So I do what's called a midday reset, where I will go lay down for 15 minutes in the middle of the day. And I do this almost every single day. And when I was going through the adrenal crisis, I did it every day. where I'll just go listen to like a guided meditation on my phone. I'll just put headphones on and lay down. I love the Honest Guys YouTube channel. That's an easy one for me. I just put it on there because I use it. I look at, okay, anxiety and stress release. It's a 15-minute guided meditation where you're on a beach and he's taking you through breathing exercises. That works really well for me. Sometimes I'll fall asleep for a minute, wake up with a chime at the end after 15 minutes, and I'm ready to go again. It helps to reboot my computer, and I highly, highly recommend that. There's all kinds of, you can do yoga nidra, which is it's called sleeping yoga, which is great. Just focuses on your breathing while you're laying down. You can do Calm, you can do Headspace. There's so many apps that you can use. You can do 20-minute guided meditation on YouTube, and it'll come up with 5,000 different ones that you can do. And I just do that on my tablet, put my headphones on, and I'm good to go. So midday reset's really helpful. Gratitude journal. Tony Robbins says it's impossible to be anxious and grateful at the same time. And he's right about that. So one thing I try to do every morning is I start with 3 things I'm grateful for in the morning. It could be, I'm grateful for these 2 legs that I have. I'm grateful for the lungs that I have. I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for you guys. I'm grateful for my practice. I'm grateful for the health that I have. I'm grateful for the immune system I have. I'm grateful for all of these things. And when I start my day in gratitude, that takes you out of that fight or flight. It puts you back into parasympathetic rest, digest, and heal mode. It takes the pressure off of the adrenal glands. And the last one is expressive writing. There's a great book called Back in Control. Glenn Hanscom, I believe is his name. He was an MD who did back surgery on people. And he found out that after they had back surgery, they didn't do that well, a lot of them. They had even worse pain afterwards. And what he started doing is having everybody that came to him for back surgery, he would have them do 30 days of this expressive writing and a couple of other things, because it was his theory that their nervous system had become hyperadrenalized, which means it was stuck on all the time. And that can cause chronic pain. So if the nerves are firing, even though there's nothing really causing the nerves to fire, there's not like a bone pressing on the nerve or a disc pressing on the nerve, it can mimic those symptoms because there's just too much adrenaline. He calls it a hyperadrenalized nervous system. So you want to give the adrenaline an outlet. You want to give the stress an outlet rather than just letting it go back in. So this is his expressive writing. And what you do, especially during this time when there's a lot of anxiety and just underlying junk going on, you get up in the morning, 5 minutes in the morning. He recommends 5 minutes at night. I only did it in the morning. Take a blank sheet of paper and you just write all the stuff that's irritating you. And you don't filter it. You're not this is not a diary. So you just write as fast as you can go. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like feeling this way. I don't like that I walked into the store and I don't like any of that stuff. I don't like that I can't go to church with more than 50 people. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like that. Whatever it is. Because that stuff's going on and it's chattering anyway. Trying to stuff it down doesn't work. So you just let it out, And then when you're done with it, you take the piece of paper, and this is really important. You take what you just wrote, is your whole piece of paper, and then you tear it up and you throw it away. You're not analyzing it. You're not thinking about it. You're not going to come back and revisit it later. You just get rid of it. And if you do this, I promise you, your anxiety level will go down. I promise you your stress level will go down. It can even be, I have too much stuff to do with the kids. I have this much going on. This person's coming right. Whatever it is that your little monkey mind is using, you get that on paper, or put it in its little prison on paper, throw it away, and you'll feel better afterwards. It also helps your adrenals. So just starting to manage your peace. I don't call it stress management. I call it peace management. It's like Dave Ramsey. It's called Financial Peace University. It's not called Poverty Management University. It's financial peace. Well, you want to start creating peace rather than just managing stress. All right. So creating peace in your life, and you got to find time to do that. That's the invitation. And for me, I realized that I wanted to do it differently than I had done it the first year. I didn't want to push so hard. I didn't want to miss out on moments. I didn't want to not be present with people. I wanted to change the way that I did that. And this adrenal fatigue allowed me to do that, which was one of the things I'm really thankful for. Okay, so sleep. I want to spend a few minutes here on sleep, and then we'll wrap it up. But this is, I'm going to give you a few more things on adrenal as we go through this, because I'm going to get into some testing and what's important and why it's important and why you might not be sleeping. Why is sleep important? Number one is how the brain gets rid of waste. It's called the glymphatic system. It gets rid of these things called beta amyloid proteins. Too many beta amyloid proteins building up in your brain causes Alzheimer's disease. We know this beyond a shadow of a doubt. If you have chronic issues with sleep or chronic insomnia, your risk of Alzheimer's disease goes up dramatically. 2015 study showed that as sleep decreased, the hunger hormone increased, ghrelin. So it means you eat more when you don't sleep well. Has a negative impact on leptin, insulin, which is diabetes, cortisol we just talked about, and DHEA. So all of those things, insulin, cortisol, and DHEA are not regulated properly when you don't sleep. This is from a study in 1997 from Sleep Journal. Even partial acute sleep loss delays the recovery of the HPA. That's that hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, which means it doesn't heal properly. When you're sleeping, you're healing. If you're not sleeping, you're not healing. Negatively affecting the stress response with accelerated development of metabolic and cognitive consequences. What does that mean? That means Alzheimer's and early dementia for people that don't sleep well, which was me when I was going through this. And then from the same study, sleep loss results in an elevation of cortisol levels the next morning, or the next evening, sorry. So when you're trying to go to bed the next day after a poor day of sleep, sometimes you can't because your cortisol levels are higher. So it just really completely whacks everything out. Sleep is so, so important. So what do most people turn to when it comes to sleep? Something like Ambien. Ambien was just given a black box warning, as were these other ones, Lunesta, Sonata, those were as well. These are sedatives, guys. These are not, this is not melatonin. This isn't not something your brain makes. These are sedatives. And when you're taking these, you are knocked out. You are not asleep. There's a difference. If I drink 4 bottles of wine and I pass out tonight, I'm not going to wake up feeling good. That was not restful sleep. I was knocked out. I was not sleeping. Sleeping is there's a whole symphony to what happens when you sleep, with your REM cycles and when your body recycles serotonin and all kinds of amazing things. But I don't have time to go into all of the problems with Ambien, but we know they're only designed for short term. They're not designed for long term. And I understand why people turn to that, because when you have sleep problems, like, what the hell else am I going to do? But Ambien is not the answer long term. You guys have heard me talk about this before. Like, people are, going to the store, buying stuff, coming home, making a meal, going back to bed, and not remembering it because they were on Ambien. Not a good thing. So what's better solutions there? Well, the first one is looking at your melatonin. Okay, so we've talked about cortisol, we talked about DHEA, talk about melatonin for a minute. Melatonin is what helps you sleep. Okay, melatonin is what helps you sleep. So it helps you stay asleep at night, helps you go to sleep. So your melatonin, when you wake up in the morning, should be low. Okay, you don't want high levels of melatonin because you want to be able to sleep. What happens over the day, though, is those melatonin levels start to rise. See, around 8 o'clock right here. So those melatonin levels start to go up. They get higher around 10 o'clock. So you go to sleep. They stay high, even to this magic time right here, 2:30 to 4 o'clock, which is where most people wake up if they do wake up. And then they slowly fall, and then you wake up with low levels of melatonin. Okay. So what happens with people that don't sleep well is their melatonin levels are really low. They never go up. Or people that wake up at 2:30 in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning and can't go back to sleep, what happens is your melatonin levels might go up and then they go back down here. They're down too early. So you don't get this restful sleep up here. You don't peak in the middle of the night. Several reasons that can happen. All right. Adrenals can affect that for sure. But you need to know that because there's something you can do about it. So like trouble falling asleep, I'll have someone doing like 1 milligram of melatonin an hour before they go to bed. Because that helps raise the melatonin levels if their levels are coming out low. If they're not staying asleep, they might need to sustain like all night time release. So the melatonin is getting released slowly over time. So it's basically helping your body with this bell curve right here. So the melatonin plays a massive, massive role in how you sleep. I'm going to give you show you a couple examples in a minute. But so people always ask me, like, how much melatonin do I take? Should I just take melatonin? For me, I don't just do melatonin. And I don't recommend that for most people because you can get more bang for your buck doing some other things. The one that I recommend is Insomnitol. We have this in the office. It's a chewable. You keep it right next to your bed. And it has vitamin B6, which helps the adrenals. Very important for adrenal function. Inositol, which helps sleep and reduces anxiety. Right? It helps regulate serotonin in your brain and helps you sleep. L-theanine also helps regulate serotonin in your brain. 5-HTP helps regulate serotonin, and then GABA. GABA is like nature's Valium. And then it has melatonin. So 3 milligrams of melatonin. If you take 2 of those, most people have them start with 1. So they're getting 1.5 milligrams of melatonin, getting half of these amounts, and they sleep really, really well. If some of that's still not working for people, then we'll have them up that dosage a little bit. But people always ask me, like, how much do I take? When do I take it? What do I do? You take that about an hour before you go to bed for most people, but you're just guessing when you do that. So let me give you a couple examples here. So These are functional medicine tests, and I'll show you what they mean in a minute. So this is a 48-year-old man, came in, felt super old. So when I did the ERE, or that top 3 killers questionnaire, the ERE I was telling you about, he said, I feel like I'm getting old really fast. I have brain fog. I'm really tired in the morning, and I get really tired in the afternoon, right? He's like, I can't explain why this is going on. So what happened with him, if we look at his cortisol levels, his cortisol, again, which should be up here and then go down slowly. Look at his cortisol in the morning, just no cortisol there, no cortisol at noon, and it would kind of normalize in the afternoon and midnight. So he actually slept okay at night, could go to sleep okay, but in the morning, just dead tired, no packets of energy. So he needed something to do about that. So what we did with him is, sorry, let me go back to this one for a second. So what we did with him was help support his adrenals, okay? So his DHEA levels were very, very low. So we started doing DHEA in the morning. DHEA is that fountain of youth hormone. So it helped his attitude, helped his memory, helped with the brain fog, helped with the energy level. So that's the first thing to do, is stabilize the DHEA, that fountain of youth hormone. So he started taking DHEA in the morning. And then the second thing that he did was we helped regulate his cortisol levels. Oh, I was jumping in there, sorry about that. We regulated his cortisol levels. He needed some help with cortisol. So we gave him, it's called Adrenal Plus. It's a supplement that you take that has several different botanicals that raise cortisol levels or help your body use cortisol more regularly. And you don't take it all the time. You take it at the time that you need it. So we had him taking that first thing in the morning, and then we had him taking it over here as well. Has rhodiola, has ashwagandha, double-blind studies showing that those things increase cortisol levels. So we got him doing those, got him doing his DHEA, feels like a completely different person. And now another example, different example. 32-year-old woman, we call this sleepless in the living room, which means she would go to sleep, or she would try to go to sleep at night, and she could not sleep. So what was going on with her, if you look at the same cortisol level, her cortisol levels were good in the morning, all right, pretty decent. So she had good energy in the morning, pretty good in the middle of the day. And then what happened, instead of that cortisol continuing to go down like it should, hers was going up. So she was in phase 2 of adrenal fatigue. She was in that wired and tired. Now I'm going to do something completely different for her than I would do for him, because you have to time it, right? So once we got that information, we gave her the same Adrenal Plus at night to be able to reduce that cortisol level, and she started sleeping really, really well. Last one here, 42-year-old, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, can't get back to sleep. Again, cortisol levels are good in the morning, noon, pretty decent, okay there, and then midnight, low down here. But watch what was happening. Oh, I don't have the melatonin on there. Oops, sorry. So, but what was happening is, I'd add another slide. The melatonin was up here, right? So we woke up with melatonin in the morning. So his melatonin basically matched the same cortisol graph here. So melatonin was high in the morning, very low in the evening. So got him doing the melatonin lozenge, time release, being able to sleep well at night, which is fantastic. So there's 3 different presentations of people who felt kind of similar, but the first thing we look at is that cortisol map, and then we look at the melatonin and the DHEA. This person's DHEA was also very low, but even lower than the person's before. So he was doing like 25 milligrams of melatonin. Again, better mood, more concentration, better sleep. All of those things happen when you increase those DHEA levels. So that's why we test. And I call this, test, don't guess. Test, don't guess. And